There is a price on the man's head, and it is $30,000. For most American snipers in Vietnam, the enemy will pay a few dollars, perhaps $2,000 for a particularly troublesome one. For the Marine with a white feather in his hat, they offer 15 times the going rate, and they send their own best marksman to collect it. He is one of 3 men who, across a few years and a few patches of the same war, turn a single rifle and an almost inhuman patience into the most lethal individual records in the history of marksmanship. One of them will finish with the highest confirmed kill count of the entire conflict and then vanish from memory entirely. Another will hold a record no one knows he holds for more than 20 years. What unites them is that they can do the one thing the rest of the American war machine cannot. They can reach the enemy on ground the enemy believes is his own. The problem the sniper answers is a strategic one, and to understand why he matters, the strategy has to come first. American power in Vietnam is built on the ability to mass overwhelming force against an identified target. The North Vietnamese and Viet Cong build their entire method around denying that identification. They rarely concentrate, they hold no ground for its own sake, and they move at night through terrain that an outsider cannot read. The result is that American firepower, devastating in theory, is frequently aimed at nothing. Artillery can flatten a hilltop. It cannot locate a single rifleman in a tree line who is willing to lie still for 2 days. The sniper can. He is the one instrument that operates inside the enemy's problem rather than around it, and that is precisely why commanders come to value him. The capability has to be rebuilt almost from scratch, because the American services keep forgetting it. After every war, precision marksmanship is treated as a temporary expedient, stood up when the shooting starts and dismantled when it stops. By the early years of Vietnam, there is no standing doctrine, no dedicated school, and very little equipment. The Marine Corps moves first. In 1965, the 3rd Marine Division fields its first sniper teams in South Vietnam, armed not with military weapons in the conventional sense, but with target rifles. Winchester Model 70s in 30-06 caliber, fitted with 8-power unertl scopes and built to match grade standards. These are precision instruments placed in the hands of men selected to use them, and by late 1965, roughly 24-man teams are operating across the Marine area of responsibility. The figure who turns this improvisation into a system is a Marine officer named Edward James Land, then a captain, who in 1966 establishes a Scout Sniper School on Hill 55, a dominant terrain feature southwest of Da Nang. Land's contribution is not any single shot, but a method. The men who pass through his school are trained to stalk, to observe, to estimate range and wind, and above all, to wait. This last skill, it turns out, is the one that separates the competent from the legendary, because the shooting is the smallest part of the job. The popular image of the sniper as a man who simply shoots well misses most of what the work demands. A team, typically a shooter and a spotter, spends the overwhelming majority of its time not firing but moving and watching, and the moving is the dangerous part. To reach a useful position, the team must leave a defended area, cross ground the enemy knows far better than they do, and settle in to observe without being observed in return. Then they wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, motionless in punishing heat amid insects, snakes, and patrols. The discipline this requires is closer to a hunter's than a soldier's, and it cannot be taught quickly. A man who can hit a bullseye on a known range is not yet a sniper. He becomes one only when he can suppress the human urge to move, to scratch, to shift a cramped leg. The men who fail at sniping rarely fail at shooting. They fail at waiting. There is a further tension built into every engagement between the value of a kill and the cost of taking it. A single shot announces the sniper's presence, and from that moment his advantage begins to erode. The enemy now knows, within a rough arc, that a shooter is out there, and the team's survival depends on an escape route planned before the trigger is ever pulled. This is why so much of the craft lives in the approach and the withdrawal rather than the shot, and why an experienced sniper learns to value the shot he does not take. A target that cannot be engaged without giving away the position is often a target best left alone. The kill counts that emerge from this system need a word of explanation, because the standard behind them is far stricter than the public usually assumes. For a Marine sniper, a confirmed kill has to be witnessed and verified by a third party, normally an officer, in addition to the sniper's own spotter. Sensible as record-keeping, this rule guarantees systematic undercounting, since the most effective snipers work precisely where there are no witnesses but their own teams. The confirmed figure is a floor, not a ceiling. Every experienced sniper understands this, and it is the key to reading the 3 careers that follow, because none of these men regarded his confirmed total as the measure of his work. It was only the portion that happened to be seen. The first of them is also the least known, which is itself revealing. In late 1968, Staff Sergeant Adelbert Waldron, called Bert of the United States Army, arrives in the Mekong Delta and is assigned to the 9th Infantry Division as part of the Mobile Riverine Force, a combined Army and Navy effort fighting from boats along the waterways of the 4th Corps region. He has come up through the division's own sniper school, and he carries a weapon that sets him apart from his Marine counterparts. Where the Marines favor bolt-action rifles, Waldron uses the semi-automatic XM21, an accurized M14 fitted with an optical scope and capable of follow-up shots no bolt gun can match. He works frequently at night using a starlight scope, an early light amplification device that turns the darkness of the Delta into something he can read. What sets Waldron apart is not only volume but circumstance. He compiles 109 confirmed kills in roughly 8 months, the highest total of any American sniper in the entire war, a rate that reflects both the target-rich environment of the Delta and his own skill. The waterborne nature of the fighting produces engagements that would have been impossible in earlier wars. On more than one occasion, Waldron makes his kills from a moving boat, firing from a platform that pitches with the water beneath him, and in one documented case, he kills an enemy at a range of more than 900 meters from exactly such a platform. The achievement is best measured by what it demands. A rifle on a stable rest at 900 meters is already a hard problem. A rifle held by a man on moving water against a target that distance has reduced to a speck is something else entirely. His reputation in the Delta takes on a quality that goes beyond numbers. Among the men who work the rivers at night, it is said that once the darkness comes down, the night belongs to Bert and his rifle. His value to the riverine force is not simply the enemy dead, but the degree to which his presence denies the enemy the night, which had been his safest time to move. In January 1969, near a village in Kien Hoa province, Waldron's reconnaissance position comes under heavy fire from a substantial Viet Cong force, and his conduct in that fight earns him the Silver Star. By the time he leaves Vietnam in the summer of 1969, he is not only the deadliest American sniper of the war, but the most decorated Army sniper of his generation, holding 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, a Silver Star, and 3 Bronze Stars. And then he all but disappears. Waldron writes no book, gives no interviews, and holds his record for confirmed kills for decades, a mark not broken until the Iraq War. The contrast with his more famous Marine contemporaries is instructive, and it sets up the central pattern of this story. The deadliest of the 3 becomes the most obscure, in part because nobody tells his story, and in part because he gives no sign of wanting it told. Lethality, it turns out, has very little to do with fame. The man who supplies the most fame, and who becomes for a generation the public face of American sniping, is a Marine. Gunnery Sergeant Carlos Hathcock, of the 1st Marine Division, deploys to Vietnam in 1966 as a military policeman and almost immediately volunteers for combat, which takes him to the 1st Marine Division sniper platoon on Hill 55. He carries the Winchester Model 70 and 30-06 with the 8-power unertl scope, the weapon that defines the early Marine program, and his final tally of 93 confirmed kills is exceeded by others. Yet his is the name the enemy is said to fear above all, and the reason has as much to do with theater as with marksmanship. The detail that makes Hathcock recognizable, and that he uses deliberately, is a white feather tucked into the band of his bush hat. In an environment where snipers go to extreme lengths to stay invisible, wearing a visible marker is a calculated provocation, an invitation to the enemy to come and find him. It works well enough that the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong come to know him by it, calling him the White Feather Sniper, and it is his head that carries the $30,000 price. So many marksmen come looking for him that other Marines reportedly begin wearing white feathers of their own, hoping to confuse anyone hunting the real target. The man has made himself bait, and he knows exactly what he is doing. His confirmed total undersells him for the same reason it undersells every sniper of the war, and Hathcock himself estimated his true number lay between 300 and 400. The figure cannot be verified, which is the entire point. What can be documented as several engagements that built his reputation, and the most famous of them required almost no shooting at all. At some point in his service, Hathcock is offered a mission so dangerous he is not told its details until he has agreed to it. The target is a senior North Vietnamese Army officer, a general, at his encampment. Inserted by helicopter into a field near the position, Hathcock begins crawling across open ground, and the crawl is what the story is remembered for. He covers roughly 1,500 yards over 4 days and 3 nights, moving so slowly the motion would be imperceptible to anyone watching, advancing inches at a time to avoid disturbing the grass and leaving a visible trail. He does not sleep. He barely eats. Enemy patrols pass within feet of him. At one point, a bamboo viper, one of the most dangerous snakes in the region, crawls across his body, and he does not move, because any movement would kill him as surely as the snake might. This is the one mission, he later says, on which he removes the white feather from his hat, understanding that in that field it would be a death sentence rather than a taunt. When the general finally steps into the open, an aide moves in front of him, and Hathcock waits. When the aide clears, he fires a single shot from around 700 yards, kills the general, and begins the long crawl back out while the enemy searches the tree line for a shooter who is already gone. They never see him. His commanding officer, Edward Land, recalls a man who had so completely integrated himself into the environment that he had effectively become part of it, possessing the patience and the courage to do work most men could not endure for an hour, let alone 4 days. The engagement that may say the most about Hathcock, though, is not against a general but against another sniper. Frustrated by his work around Hill 55, the North Vietnamese send a marksman of their own to kill him, a man the Americans come to call the Cobra. The Cobra's method is to draw Hathcock out by killing Marines near his base, and when he shoots a gunnery sergeant outside Hathcock's own quarters, the contest turns personal. Hathcock and his spotter go out to hunt the man hunting them, and the two snipers stalk each other for days. The decisive moment comes when Hathcock, moving into position, trips over a rotted log, and the sound gives the Cobra a target. The enemy's shot strikes the spotter's canteen rather than the man, but in firing it, the Cobra gives away his own location. Hathcock fixes the direction and waits. When he fires, his bullet is said to pass directly through the Cobra's rifle scope and into his eye, a shot possible only if the enemy sniper had been looking through his optic at that exact instant, lining up a shot of his own. The implication is sobering. For the round to travel down the Cobra's scope, the Cobra must have had Hathcock in his sights when Hathcock fired first. The margin between the legend and a dead Marine was a fraction of a second. Hathcock's war ends abruptly. In September 1969, during his second tour, the amphibious tractor he is riding on strikes an anti-tank mine and erupts in flame. Badly burned, Hathcock pulls 7 Marines clear of the wreckage before his injuries take him out of the fight for good. The burns end his career as a field sniper, but not his influence, because he has already begun the work that will outlast his shooting, helping to formalize the training that turns Marine sniping from a wartime expedient into a permanent discipline. It is a quiet irony that the most famous sniper of the war is famous less for the size of his kill count, which others exceeded, than for the manner of a few of his kills, and for the deliberate theater of the white feather. Reputation is its own kind of weapon, and Hathcock wields it as skillfully as he wields the rifle. Which brings the story to the man who actually holds the Marine record, and who spends more than 2 decades unaware that anyone outside his unit cares. Sergeant Charles Mawhinney, called Chuck, of the 5th Marine Regiment, compiles 103 confirmed kills over a tour of roughly 16 months across 1968 and 1969. making him, by the strictest confirmed count, the deadliest sniper in Marine Corps history, ahead even of Hathcock. To that he adds 216 probable kills, a classification used when confirming a kill would have endangered the team. The combined number suggests a man killing the enemy at a rate of about 4 times a week, every week, for well over a year. Mawhinney carries the Remington M40, a bolt-action rifle adapted from the Remington Model 700, introduced into Marine service in 1966 and fitted with a Redfield 3-9 power scope. He operates in the dense country around An Hoa and Da Nang, and his unit comes to regard him as a master of the stalk, able to lie motionless for hours in the brush and heat while tracking enemy movement. His own description of the necessary state of mind is unsentimental to the point of bluntness. He spoke of reaching a condition in which a man stops thinking like a man and starts living like an animal, the senses sharpening until perception narrows to the single question of the kill. His rules of engagement, by his own account, were simple. If the target carried a weapon, the target went down. With one exception, an enemy paymaster he killed at 900 yards, every man he shot was armed. The engagement that best captures his talent takes place on the night of Valentine's Day 1969, near a base outside Da Nang. Word comes that a large North Vietnamese army unit is advancing, and a monsoon has grounded the air support that would normally break up such a movement. Mawhinney volunteers to go forward and cover a river the enemy will have to cross. He sets up with his spotter, his M40, and an M14 for backup, and waits as the North Vietnamese soldiers wade into the water. Then he opens fire. In roughly 30 seconds, in darkness, he fires 16 rounds, and by his account every one is a headshot. The advancing column, expecting to cross unopposed, finds itself taking precise fatal fire from an enemy it cannot locate, and the attack collapses. A single sniper, denied the air support doctrine assumed would be available, has halted a unit many times his size with 16 shots fired faster than he could work the bolt and reacquire. It is the kind of result that explains why commanders prized snipers far beyond their numbers. Across his 16 months and his more than 300 combined kills, Mawhinney is reported to have missed only once, a consistency difficult to fully credit, and yet supported by the men who kept his records. And here the story turns strange, because for more than 20 years almost no one knows it. When Mawhinney leaves the Marine Corps in 1970 and returns to rural Oregon, he simply does not speak of what he has done. He takes a job with the Forest Service and works it for decades. He tells neither friends nor, for a long time, his own family the extent of his record. The wider public believes Hathcock, with his vivid legend, holds the Marine record, and Mawhinney sees no reason to correct them. The truth surfaces almost by accident. In 1991, a fellow Marine sniper publishes a memoir describing Mawhinney's record in detail, and the claim is met with open skepticism because it seems implausible that a man with such a total could have stayed unknown. The skepticism dissolves when the records are examined. Mawhinney's platoon leader had kept the kill sheets through the war and is able to verify the numbers. His confirmed total of 103 is real, and it is higher than Hathcock's. Mawhinney, who had wanted nothing more than quiet anonymity, finds his life altered by a single book, recast against his own preference as the deadliest sniper the Marine Corps ever produced. His assessment of his war never changes. He describes himself as a simple person who had merely been doing his job, and the modesty appears entirely genuine. 3 men then, 3 rifles, 3 different paths through the same war, and the differences in their equipment and circumstances shaped everything that followed. Waldron fought in the Mekong Delta with the army, carrying the semi-automatic XM-21 and working at night with a starlight scope, and compiled 109 confirmed kills in 8 months. Hathcock fought around Da Nang with the 1st Marine Division, carrying the bolt-action Winchester Model 70 with an 8-power unertl scope, and finished with 93 confirmed and an estimated 300 to 400 unconfirmed. Mawhinney fought with the 5th Marine Regiment in the same general region, carrying the Remington M40 with a Redfield scope, and recorded 103 confirmed kills with 216 probables. 3 services worth of doctrine, 3 weapons, 3 patches of an enormous war, all producing the same essential result by different means. The pattern that connects them reveals something about how the war worked and how it was remembered. Waldron compiled the highest confirmed total of the entire conflict and then vanished into a silence so complete that most accounts of Vietnam sniping barely mention him. Hathcock, with a lower confirmed count but an instinct for the dramatic gesture, became the enduring public symbol, his reputation amplified by the very theater that made him a target. Mawhinney held the Marine record without anyone knowing it, the deadliest of the 3 by the confirmed standard and the least interested of the 3 in being known. Lethality and fame proved almost unrelated. The man who killed the most was forgotten. The man who told his story best was immortalized. And the man who actually held the record spent 20 years saying nothing. Underneath all 3 careers sits that strict confirmation standard, distorting every comparison drawn from the numbers. A confirmed kill required a witness, and the most effective snipers, by the nature of the craft, worked where there were no witnesses but their spotters. The totals of 109, 93, and 103 are therefore not measurements of skill so much as measurements of how often that skill happened to be observed. Hathcock's own estimate and the 216 probables attached to Mawhinney's record point to the same conclusion. The official ledger recorded only the visible fraction of a much larger reality, and the men who kept it knew as much. There is also an institutional legacy here that outlasted all 3 men in the field, and it traces back to the lesson the services kept forgetting. The sniper programs of Vietnam were built in a hurry out of target rifles and improvised schools because the peacetime military had let the discipline lapse after Korea. This time the lesson held. The training land and others formalized, the selection standards, the emphasis on fieldcraft over pure marksmanship became the foundation of a permanent capability the services never again allowed to disappear. Hathcock's post-war work in building that training was arguably a larger contribution than any single shot he fired. The rifles themselves entered the institutional memory. Mawhinney's M40 is preserved at the National Museum of the Marine Corps, and the Redfield scope that equipped the Marine snipers was later honored as a range call word at Camp Lejeune. What the snipers could not do was decide the war, and that gap between tactical mastery and strategic outcome is the note on which their record has to be read. Individual American excellence in Vietnam was never in short supply. The marksmanship of these 3 men was as fine as any the United States ever fielded, and it produced results that remain, decades later, among the most documented feats of arms in the modern record. None of it changed the trajectory of the conflict. The same war that rewarded the patient killer in the tree line frustrated every larger instrument of American power. The sniper, for all his lethality, was a precise answer to a question the war kept refusing to ask in a form that precision could resolve.